In the previous podcast, we explored tree support systems and how cabling and bracing can help manage structural weaknesses. Today, we're going to focus on one of the most important responsibilities in arboriculture: tree risk assessment. Because in urban environments, trees exist near people, buildings, roads, and infrastructure. And that means arborists must constantly evaluate safety. Tree risk assessment is the process of evaluating the likelihood that a tree or tree part will fail, the likelihood that it will impact a target, and the severity of the consequences if it does. It is not about determining whether a tree is safe or unsafe. Instead, it is about understanding and managing levels of risk. Let's break this down into 3 key components. First, likelihood of failure. This refers to the probability that a tree, or part of a tree, will fail within a given time frame. Factors that influence likelihood of failure include structural defects such as cracks, cavities, or weak branch attachments, decay within the trunk or roots, dead branches, leaning trees with unstable root systems, and environmental conditions such as wind exposure. Second, likelihood of impact. Even if a tree or branch fails, it only becomes a significant concern if it strikes something. A target could be a person, a building, a vehicle, or an area where people frequently gather. A tree in a remote natural area may have a high likelihood of failure, but low likelihood of impact. A tree over a busy sidewalk may have a much higher level of risk. Third, consequences of failure. This refers to the severity of the outcome if a failure occurs. Would it cause minor damage, serious injury, or significant property loss? Combining these 3 factors allows arborists to evaluate overall risk. Now let's talk about how risk assessment is performed. It typically begins with a visual inspection. Arborists examine the tree from the ground, looking for signs of defects. They assess the condition of the trunk, branches, and root zone. They also consider site conditions, for example, soil conditions, recent construction activity, and exposure to wind. In some cases, more advanced assessment tools may be used. These may include sounding tools to detect internal decay, or specialized equipment to measure wood strength. However, most risk assessments rely heavily on visual evaluation and professional judgment. It's also important to recognize that trees are dynamic living systems. Conditions change over time. A tree that is stable today may become unstable after a storm or construction disturbance. This is why regular inspections are important. Now let's talk about risk management. Once a risk is identified, arborists must decide how to address it. There are several options. Pruning can reduce risk by removing dead wood or reducing load on weak branches. Cabling or bracing can provide structural support. Changing site conditions, such as restricting access beneath a tree, can reduce the likelihood of impact. And in some cases, tree removal may be necessary. The goal is not to eliminate all risk. That is not possible. The goal is to reduce risk to an acceptable level. This concept is important. Risk tolerance varies depending on the situation. A tree in a playground may require a higher level of safety than a tree in a low-use natural area. Urban foresters must consider both biological and social factors when making decisions. For the ISA Urban Forest Professional Exam, focus on the components of tree risk. You should understand the difference between likelihood of failure, likelihood of impact, and consequences, how defects influence risk, the role of targets in determining risk level, and the basic management options available. Questions may ask you to evaluate scenarios and determine appropriate responses. Tree risk assessment is about informed decision-making. It requires observation, experience, and an understanding of both tree biology and human use of space. In the next podcast, we'll build on this by exploring how pests and diseases affect urban trees, and how arborists diagnose and manage these challenges. You've been listening to the Arborist-podcast. Our goal is to grow our collective knowledge, one domain at a time. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to help us keep this momentum. Until next time, let's keep growing this community together.